All right, welcome YouTube. This is Ermin, and in this video I'm going to talk about the data step and the proc step. And these two ideas are really the key to understanding for new people, for newbies, really how SAS programming works. So when it comes to the data step is the most important thing for you to understand because this is the primary method for creating and manipulating data sets. So when I say creating, this is because you use the data step often to import data and turn that into a SAS dataset. Now, when it comes to manipulating your dataset, I'm referring to things like being able to sort your dataset by certain columns or variables. I'm talking about filtering, so being able to only bring back the observations that you're interested in. Maybe you're only interested in the females in that data set or by a specific ID or so forth. Or maybe you want to create a new variable from variables that already exist, where you're doing some sort of calculation. All of this stuff is possible with the data step. And really, if you know the data step, you know how to do about 75% of the things that you need to do with SAS programming. So now let me take you on SAS Studio and show you what the data step is and how to work with it. So whenever you see a block of code or the beginning of the code with this data statement, you are beginning a data step. After you use the data statement, you want to give any output data set a name. So in this case, let me just give it name A. After that, you close generally each line with a semicolon, and then you move on to the next line. So then you use other SAS statements within your data step. So for example, commonly you would use the infile statement. The infile statement, as you see here, tells you that it identifies an external file to read with an input statement. Well, funnily enough, the next statement we'll be using is the input statement, but infile, all it does is it allows you to put the path of that external file. Now, I won't go through that whole thing, how you do that, but essentially, if you don't know, if you're using SAS Studio anyways, you have to upload your files here over here on the left-hand side. You click on Files Home, you upload the data set, and then once it's in here, if you right-click Files and you go to Properties, you have this location here. So all you do is you take that location and you paste it right in between here, and then you end the sequence with a semicolon. And now you're going to be able to read that file. So you're well on your way then to taking that file, taking that data set, whatever it may be, and turning it into a data set by using this data step method. Okay, so on the next line we go, and another common statement, especially you're going to want to use it if you use the infile statement, is the input statement. And the input statement allows you to specify the columns or variables that you have. It allows you to specify the type of variables or columns that they are. So is it a numeric or is it a character variable, for example? So in SAS, the way it works is, so let's say my first variable from the left is just a, I don't know, first name or something like that. So the way that you say that it's a character variable is to use this $sign like that. So I'm saying that the first name is a character variable. So like that, let's say last name. And then if you've got something like salary, which is numeric, you actually don't use anything. So that's the default. And there's a whole bunch of options here. For example, there's special ways to, if you've got a date, you want to use an in format to help SAS read that in properly. So whenever you're using the input statement, it's essentially helping SAS read the data file properly so that it can create the output data set. So in our case here, the output data set that we called A right up here. So after that, really, this is often the sort of the minimal amount of things that you need to actually create the data set. And then every data step is finished off with the run statement. So this is the basics of what you need. Now, of course, you can do a lot more in here, right? You could use, different kinds of logic, if-then statements to filter observations. You could sort, you could create new variables. And the other part that's cool is you don't have to do all of this in one block of code. So let's say you do a bunch of logic here by using if-then statements. What you can then do is you can create a data set B as another block of code. And then, you read the data set that you created above here. Since A, after you run it here, it's now going to exist, and you can read it with something like a set statement. So I say set A. So I'm saying I want to read the A data set that's been created, and I have a new data step though called B. And now you can use a whole bunch of other statements here to manipulate the data set in whichever way you want, and then you run. So now you're sort of separating and you're creating a track record of sort of different things that you've done to the data set. And often you want to, of course, use names. So this is, of course, just for simplicity's sake. But let's say I did specific changes here, like sorting. I might call it something sort, so that, people can very quickly see what I did here. So, but that's the basics. That's the basics of the data step. It allows you, as I said, to really do 75-80% of the things that you need to do. Now, on to the proc step. So what's the proc step? Well, the way to think about the proc step is that it's a more specialized kind of secondary method that you can use on your data sets. And specifically, it is used, the reason I say it's more secondary or specialized is that it's not really used to create or manipulate data sets so much as it is to process and analyze those data sets. So for example, if you want to produce statistics, if you want to do reports, if you want to do charts and plots, if you want to print onto the screen, this is what proc is all about. So now on to the proc step. Very similarly to the data step, how do we know when we're using the proc step? Well, we start with the statement proc, and then we follow it up with whatever procedure that we want. So common ones are proc print. You have things like proc means, which allows you to run particular descriptive statistics on your data set. So let's say we do means, and then next I do data equals. So this would be the name of my data set, A from above, and then run. So this is a very minimalist proc step, but you can see that the idea is that we use the data step to create and manipulate our data set in different ways, and that we use the proc step for some more special operations, if you will, on our data set to get statistics. So for example, there's tons of procedures that are related to statistics. So this is where you would use the proc step. If you're looking to create reports, this is where the proc step comes in. If you're looking to do charts and plots, this is where proc comes into the play. But it often comes into the play after you use the data step to create the data set and manipulate that data set. So let me actually show you concretely what I mean. So I'll go back up to the data step, and I'm actually going to get rid of the infile and input statement because I'm not going to actually read in an external data set. Instead, I'm just going to create it right inside of SAS Studio. And the way that you do that is to use what's called the data line statement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the input statement though, and I'm going to just do first name, last name, and let's just say salary, okay? And then I'm going to do data lines, and the data line statement just tells SAS that the next line, so this line right here, it's going to have data following it. Okay, so I'm just going to put my name, my first name, my last name, and let's just say 78,000. Okay, and then we'll make up somebody, Sarah Jones, 84,000, something like that. Okay, so then we'll go ahead and give that a run. And there you are. There's our output. It's that easy. That's how you use the data step. So then, if we wanted to run some statistics on this very, very small and pointless kind of data set that I've created, we could go down here, proc means, data A. So this is referring to our A data set, and we can run the proc means. And there's some statistics for us, the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, and the maximum. It's that easy. If you have any questions about this video, feel free to ask in the comments below.